Are you having a good time tonight? Are you getting inspired tonight? Okay. Are you believing in miracles tonight? Our next presenter has a very, very powerful story. Someone who died and came back to life. And when she auditioned, again, of many people who audition for this and oftentimes get chosen, hasn't had a lot of speaking experience, but Steve and I and Jennifer were very impressed with her poise and how she shared that story. And it even brought a tear to our eye. So join me in welcoming Cindy Heigl to the stage.
Hello, everyone. My name is Cindy Heigl, and a couple of years ago, my husband and I were living in California, and one Saturday night, we found ourselves in the emergency room. And from the emergency room, I was admitted to intensive care, and about 15 minutes after I got to intensive care, I went into sudden cardiac arrest and I flatlined. And my husband was there with me when it happened, and he said he knew right away something was really wrong because when I passed out, instead of going limp and falling in his arms like you might imagine me doing very gracefully, instead I went rigid and I started to seize. And he caught me and put me in the bed and he said chaos followed, and the nurse that was in the room started screaming for help, and the alarms in the whole hospital went off alerting staff that someone was coding in the ICU, and the walls of my room were glass doors, and they opened to let all the nurses responding in with their equipment, and everybody started doing something, and there was a guy. I nicknamed a lot of the nurses that I worked with because I had better names for them than they had. And so Big Red was the guy that did my chest compressions, and he was 6'2", 220 pounds, and every time he did a chest compression, his feet came off the floor, and he cracked my ribs. And Jeff said it was the most violent thing that he'd ever seen, and my skin turned gray, and my lips turned blue, and I started foaming at the mouth, and he worked on me for 2.5 minutes, and then I was miraculously resuscitated. And whenever people hear that I die or that I flatline, they always cautiously ask the same types of questions, like, what do you remember? And was there a bright light at the end of the tunnel? And I love sharing my story with people because it's full of hope and comfort and peace that I experienced, but I hate talking about it because I feel like I can't do it justice, and I feel like I can't give God the glory that he deserves in my testimony, because what I experienced was a peace that surpasses all understanding, and it was not of this world. In the place that I went, there was no pain and there was no anxiety, and it's not that I wasn't afraid, but fear didn't exist here, and for all the negative emotions that didn't exist, there were even more positive emotions, and it was just not of this world. And so I was lying at the bottom of an ocean, looking up at the rays of sunlight coming in through the water, and I could see my hair, each strand separated around my face in the water. And God said, I know the number of hairs on your head, and I know the number of stars in the sky, and I am with you, and I will be with you, and you don't have to be afraid because you won't be alone, and we'll get through this together. And so just be with me now, because this will all be over soon, and there's much for you to do. This is not your end. And it was weird to hear these words of comfort because I didn't need comforting. I was not afraid, and I couldn't have been more content than I was. But as he said, in time, there was no time in this place. Time didn't exist. And as he said, I know the number of hairs on your head and the number of stars in the sky, I started floating towards the surface of the water. And as I got closer to the surface of the water, the stars got brighter and brighter and brighter. And then eventually I broke the surface of the water, and that's when I came back to consciousness. And I was very confused. I fought waking up because I didn't want to leave this place of perfection that I was in. But I could hear people calling my name, and I could feel people shaking me. And I fought as long as I could, but they were relentless. And so finally, I opened my eyes just a little bit, and I saw this sea of concerned faces above me, and they were all clearly upset about something. And I didn't know what it was, but they were all looking at me, and I assumed I'd done something, and I felt like I needed to make a joke to ease the tension in the room. So I did, and it bombed. Nobody got it. But my husband, Jeff, got it. And it's okay, because through this whole experience, it was like there was this weekend event that had to happen, and it was something that we needed to go through. And God protected us with mercy and grace through the entire event and made it as easy on us as it could possibly be. And so we didn't experience fear the way that we should have, and we had little pieces of hope and miracles and all in it. And so as I spent a timeless eternity in paradise with my Creator and my Savior in this place that was so beautiful, I felt like I'd been made whole, and I was where I was created to be. And my husband, at the same time, had spent 2.5 minutes in every spouse's worst nightmare. He handed his 28-year-old wife over to strangers in the middle of the night. We were 2,000 miles away from home. We grew up in Indiana, and we were in California. It was the middle of the night. Nobody knew what was going on, and he was alone in a hospital room watching his world and his wife crash. And as they started talking about brain damage and the lack of oxygen, I had some brain damage. I lost my train of thought. Just when they were starting to talk about brain damage and the lack of oxygen, they injected me with atropine and adrenaline, and I woke up, and the first words that he said let him know that I was okay, and his best friend was still in there, and that I was gonna be okay, in the head. And he would have figured it out eventually, but it didn't take a moment longer than it took for me to wake up for him to know. And God gave us mercy in that situation to get through this thing that we had to get through to realize this blessing that he had for us at the end. And so the reason that I went into sudden cardiac arrest is because I have a pacemaker. And I've had a pacemaker since I was 14, and my pacemaker wire broke. So my pacemaker stopped working, and my heart couldn't beat. So I needed a new pacemaker, and they said that they had to do this procedure to put a temporary pacemaker in. It was Saturday night in the middle of the night, and they needed to do something, but they couldn't do it till 8 in the morning because they didn't have a sterile surgical room, a controlled environment to do it in, and they didn't have the staff in the middle of the night to be able to do it. So they said that in 8 hours they were going to do it right away, and I just had to wait. So I waited, and I waited, and I waited for 15 minutes, and I flatlined again. And this time, I was only out for 1.5 minutes because all the staff was still there at my room, and they resuscitated me much quicker. And so this time, after they resuscitated me the second time, they said, we have to do it right away. We can't wait until the morning. You're in too critical of condition. We've got to do it now. We still don't have the room, and we still don't have the staff, so we can't put you under. You're going to have to be awake. And I said, if you give me pain medicine, I probably won't feel it, and I probably won't remember any of this. It's so traumatic. It doesn't matter. Just do it. And so they started the procedure, and I could smell the chemical that they used to clean the skin, and I could feel them start the procedure, and I waited, and I could feel them continue the procedure, and I could not feel my pain medicine. And I got agitated, and I asked where it was, and the nurse calmly and quietly said, Cindy, your heart's not strong enough for any medicine right now. Just hold my hand. We're almost done. And a wave of terror washed over me, and I was like, what is she talking about? And I knew what had happened because the doctor came in and told me I coded, and I was like, was it a code red or a code blue? And he was like, code red means you caught on fire, Cindy. You didn't, it was, you coded, your heart stopped beating. And I was like, oh, you're not funny either. And so I knew that I'd coded, and then the chaplain came, and he said, I come to pray with families and patients who are in critical condition and who are dying. And then he prayed for me, And so I knew what was going on, but it didn't hit me until she said, your heart's not strong enough for any pain medicine. And I started freaking out, and I started praying, and I was like, God, help me, fix me. And I couldn't think of more than 2 words to pray. And I just thought, God, I am literally on my deathbed, and I am all alone, and I am so scared, and it hurts so bad. Just fix me. Where are you? Don't you know what's going on? And I just prayed, fix me. And he didn't fix me. But as I continued to pray, I focused on the music that had been playing since the chaplain left our room. And it was music that was so relevant to my situation, like, there's pain in the night, but joy comes in the morning, and I'll keep my eyes above the waves. Though oceans rise, my soul will rest in your embrace. And I didn't know how he knew exactly what I would need to hear to get through that, but it worked, and I got through the surgery. And after the surgery, I asked about it because I wanted to know what playlist it was or whatever, and they were like, Cindy, there was no music playing. And I was like, yes, there was. And they're like, you're in the ICU, and there's a lot of equipment in here, but there's not a radio. And I said, I was covered. I think maybe he brought a boombox. And they were like, Cindy, this procedure was so serious, you died twice before we could do it on your bed in the ICU room. We didn't leave a germ-infested boombox. There was no music. But I know that there was, and that's what I focused on to get through the surgery. And it was as if God had this miracle, this blessing for me to realize at the end, and things had started to fall into place months ahead of time, and his plan was coming to fruition, and it was almost done, but right here, so close to the end, I caught wind that something was wrong, and I started praying and begging God for my will and to fix it how I thought it needed to be done. And if I had gotten what I wanted and what I'd begged for in those moments, I wouldn't have received the blessing, and God gave us grace and mercy just to get through the worst of it. And so now I was in stable condition, and my doctor came in and started talking about this procedure that I needed to have done. And I recognized it because my beloved doctors at Riley Children's Hospital, who diagnosed me and had been my doctors for 12 years, told me I needed this surgery 10 years ago. But it was too dangerous. It would kill me. There were no odds of surviving. You just couldn't. It would kill you. It couldn't be done. I needed it, but couldn't have it. So my new doctor, who I'd been seeing for 22 days, told me she wanted to do this procedure. And I told her about my concerns and said, why would you even suggest that? And she said, 10 years ago when you first needed it, it was a very dangerous procedure, and it still is, but we've had advances in technology and equipment, and it can be done, and this is what you need. And I said, well, I don't want to be your guinea pig. What are the statistics? Have you done it before? And of all the doctors that I could have started seeing 22 days ago in the state of California, she said, this procedure has been done here 109 times. And of the 109 times, I have done it 107. And I just thought, oh, well, God didn't bring me this far to only bring me this far. And he didn't put this woman in my life at this time for no reason. And so we decided to go on with that procedure. And then she starts talking about the next steps. And she said it's a couple of surgeries back to back. It's complicated, and it has to be done in a particular room. So we have to have access to that room. And we, in fact, need 4 surgical teams to be in your 8-hour surgery for the duration. So it's going to take some scheduling. This was on Monday, and she said, hopefully by Friday, we can do it, if not next Monday. And I was like, whatever. My pacemaker was working, and they were giving me morphine again, so I could have waited. But she left the room, and 10 minutes later, she sticks her head in the door, and she's like, Cindy, if you're ready, we can start in 20 minutes. And they did. And my 8-hour surgery took 3.5 hours. And I went back to my room that day, and I went home the next day. And I got home, yeah. And when I got home, I was sitting on my couch thinking about why this had happened and the timeline of everything that did happen and what the purpose was. And I believe that my purpose was to share my experience and to have this experience so that I could share it in the hope and comfort that I experienced in my death. And it wasn't anything like I thought it would be. Oh, God, I hope one of those hasn't been in my hair the whole time. They told us to check, and I forgot. But I knew right away that this was something that I would have to share. And so I want to thank you guys for letting me share my story with you. And this is my husband, Jeff. And I want to leave you with my favorite Bible verse, Jeremiah 29:11. For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans to prosper and not harm you, plans for a hope and a future.
Great job, Cindy. Thank you so much for sharing your story with us tonight. I think that piece of confetti was an angel coming down all around you. That's a powerful story. I've heard that several times. She was also on the radio show, and she shared that as well. One of the things that Steve and I love so much about this is giving an opportunity for many people, like Cindy, like Amanda, who haven't had an opportunity to speak before, to speak in front of a crowd like this, all you wonderful, good people. And we just love seeing them start to take off and have more opportunities to speak as well.